What's up YouTube, and welcome to another draw along with me, where today we're going to create this boat painting design and I'll guide you through step by step on how you can do this. And this particular style is super easy. It's really relaxed, have some fun with it. We're going to use some of the painting brushes and we're just going to chuck in the color and keep it nice and loose. Now, as always, there's links to everything in the description down below, so you can go ahead and check out the palette as well as a helpful guide on how you can install palettes, as well as the canvas size for today. Everything else is built into Procreate, so you don't need any additional brushes. And if you didn't already know, I post 3 extra tutorials every single month over on my Patreon. With the catalogue at 70 at the time of recording, the catalogue continues to grow. So be sure to check out the links in the description down below if you want to come and join the family, get sneak peeks, early access, and much, much more. So with all that said, let's get started. So once you've created your canvas, the first thing we'll do is go to our colors and we'll grab this color here in the bottom left of the palette and we'll drag it onto the screen. What we'll then go ahead and do is go to our colors. We'll grab the middle color in that first column. We'll go back to our layers and we'll create a new layer. And if we go to our brush library, we're going to go to the option of painting and we're going to use the Nico Rel. And we're going to go ahead and set that size, first of all, around about something like 16%. I'm going to zoom out of my canvas just a little bit. And we're going to want to try and just get a little bit lower than halfway, and we're going to draw in a line across the screen and pop your finger on the screen to make sure it's nice and straight. And this is going to be our water. Now we want to go ahead and make sure that that is fairly blocked in, especially at the top. So I'm going to draw that in again and pop my finger on the screen yet again. And then from there, we'll go ahead and just create a fill at the bottom. Now I'm going to increase the brush size up to maybe around about 30% and just simply go from left to right. And if you get any sort of traces in there of the brush texture, just leave it. And if you get any sort of big gaps, you can leave that too. Just a little bit of sort of disruption to the actual paint will look great. So just a little bit of this in the bottom area of our canvas. That's going to act as our water. What we're then going to go ahead and do is go to our layer. We'll create a new layer and tap on it and clip it to our water layer. We're then going to go to our colors and grab the second color in the palette. We're going to drop our brush back down to something around about sort of the 16% mark will be fine. And we're going to go ahead and introduce some blue. So we're going to create some streaks across the screen just with some light pressure and just adding in some streaks across, little areas of blue that will just help our sea have some nice variety of color to it, and let that somewhat fade off towards the bottom. You can go back in and just create some more streaks and layer them on top of each other, and that's the beautiful thing about this particular brush is you can create that beautiful streaky look to it. So we're going to aim for something something like this. Just introduce another streak or two here, and they don't always have to go all the way across the screen. They can just go a little bit inwards from the side. It's up to you. Next, we're going to go ahead and introduce the next color to the water. So we're going to go to our layers and we'll create another new layer. We'll tap on that also and clipping mask it. And our color wants to be set to the third color in that middle row. And the brush size, I've gone up to about 26% there. And we're just going to sort of very lightly just go across the screen, just introduce some lighter areas of color and go all the way across. Now we can introduce more later on, so less will be more at this point, but just a nice little covering like so. Next we'll move on to the background, so we'll go to our layers and we'll go down to the big block of color. On this layer we're just going to go ahead and go to our colors. We're going to move to the second color on the bottom row because these are all our sky colors, so bottom color of the second column. And we're just going to introduce a slightly brighter look towards the bottom. So again, just sort of streak this out, keep it nice and rough, nice and loose. Just have a bit of a gradient down towards the horizon line there. So just a little bit of color. Then we'll go ahead and go to our colors. We'll grab the yellow, so the third color on that bottom row. And again, with a sort of much lighter pressure, we're just going to streak in across the sky. Now you can maybe reduce your brush size down to the 16%. And just maybe just streak in some areas of yellow just to vary up the sky, just a little something like this, and maybe the slight bit of brighter yellow tone here and there will look fine. Just nice and loose, remember, keep it nice and fun, and try to avoid a few of those streaks looking a bit too sort of like a barcode almost sideways. We want to add in enough streaks that they just blend into one another, nice transitions. Next, let's go ahead and introduce the sun, and this is where we kind of get in towards the lighting where it comes to life a bit more. So we're going to go ahead and go to our layer. We're going to create another new layer. We're going to change the blend mode from normal and we're going to change it to add. We're going to go to our colors. We're going to grab this orange tone, and this is going to be our light source throughout the whole design. So the bottom of the fourth column, the fourth color on the bottom row. And we can make the brush size a lot bigger, around about maybe 40%. And what we're going to do is we're going to draw in a circle. So down here, we're going to draw in a circle a couple of times. You can see that sun build up. And this area here is going to be the brightest, but we want it to sort of spread out and just nicely fade out as it makes its way across the canvas. So this is going to be super bright over here, so you don't need to worry about that. But just go round in bigger and bigger circles until you can create some nice sort of streaks across the sky. And you want to make sure they're nice and circular though. So that one there for me, I've undone it because I want to make sure that this area down here is super bright, but has a nice sort of radial look to it. So just going to create some bigger streaks and just add some extra color to the sky. Future Joel here, just to let you know that at this point the camera starts to sort of blow out the colours a little bit more, so it's a little bit brighter and a little bit whiter than it will actually appear on your canvas and on mine. So just bear that in mind for the rest of the video. It's probably going to be a little bit more warmer, a little bit more orange and yellow, and even slightly red on your work and mine, especially right towards the end of the design. Anyway, back to the video. Now while we're on the sky, we'll also go ahead and go to our layers. We'll create another new layer. We'll go to our colors and we'll grab the middle color in the first column. And then in the top left, we're going to go ahead and just sort of darken up the top left corner with some streaks in the sky there, just to sort of emphasize the brightness more than anything. So just darken up that top left corner, create some nice curves in your patterns, and you can get to something quite dark like this. And we may even go a little bit bigger than that with a few more streaks. So once you're happy with sort of that background gradient, we can then go ahead and move on to the water. Now for the water, we're going to go ahead and go to our layers. We're going to go right to the top of them and you'll be on a clip layer. If you create another new layer, tap on it and clipping mask it. We're going to go ahead and change the blend mode from normal and change it to add. And we're going to go to our colors and we're going to grab the bottom color in the fourth column. Again, with the Nico roll, we want to go ahead and maybe set it to about sort of 16% to start with. And we're going to just blend across our water a little bit, creating some really nice streaky look to the top surface. And back there is going to be the brightest, over here is going to be the lightest. Now I've started at 16%, but then I'm going to drop it down to maybe around about 6 and just start to streak in, and be brave, just streak in some areas of color. You will notice I'm going to leave this area here for our ship because I don't really want to have to make any adjustments later on. So try to leave some space for it. And we're going to just go ahead and just create little dashes here and there. Lots and lots of just sort of horizontal streaks, nice little paint strokes. You can brighten up your horizon line, and especially over here, just really brighten that up. You can go even smaller than 6%. You can go down to about 4% if you wish. Create some more specific little lines here and there. So just create some extra little areas of detail. You can get in here and just create lots and lots of streaks, little dashes, and that's just going to be sort of the top surface of the water, and that'll look great. And you can just go down to roughly around about this mark because we'll introduce our waves down here shortly. And then we can get really brave and go back in and just dash in a few places, just like this. Just lots of little dashes, lots and lots of little dashes. Keep it nice and loose. Enjoy yourself. Don't stress over this one. It's meant to be quite an easy one. We're just going to add in all these little dashes. It's going to be the top surface of the water. And again, I'm then going to go ahead and just brighten up that sort of middle point here where it's going to be the center of our sun. We want the water to be nice and bright over in that corner. Now let's go ahead and add in our ship before we start to add in other details. So we're going to go to our colors. We're going to grab this color here at the top of the second column. So the second color in on that top row. We're going to go ahead and use the Nico roll still, the Nico roll. And we're going to go ahead and just set the brush size down to maybe around about 3%. We're going to go to our layers and create a new layer right at the top. And we're going to create our ship shape. Now for this, we're going to go ahead and draw in a straight line down. Now about 3% is probably a little bit too big. So let's go down to 2 to start with. So we'll draw in a straight line down and pop your finger on the screen and it will make sure it's nice and straight. And then from there, we're going to go ahead and we're going to create the sort of base of the shape. So we're going to go ahead and just start over here. It's going to have a slight curve to it and it's going to go outwards on the right hand side a little bit more than it does over here on the left. So I'm going to just draw that in for a minute and hold my pen down. And then I can go up to here, I can tap on it and I can edit this arc. So I can go ahead and adjust its angle and just try to make sure it's somewhat straight over here, but has that nice flick up on the right hand side. So essentially these two dots here are going to be the sort of main center point of the boat, and this is just going to stick off at the front of the nose. So a little something like this. We want to keep it somewhat flat here. Once you've done that, you can go ahead and just tap away, and then we'll introduce the actual rest of the shape at the bottom. So we're going to go ahead and over here, I'm just going to create a bit of a diagonal line down. And again, it's meant to be rough. Don't stress over the shape too much. A little line down there. Off the back of the ship, we're going to introduce another line, somewhat leaning towards the right hand side. So just a little line like this. And then at this point, just draw in a line to link the two together. So put your finger on the screen to make sure it's nice and horizontal. And if you've got any gaps in your sort of brush strokes there, just go back over and just fill in any real gaps so that you can drag and drop the color in. If it spills out, if your color spills out, if we go to here and it goes to something like this, hold down and just drag to the left until it slowly contains itself. Now you may have to go ahead and undo that, drag it in again and be a bit faster with your drag to the left so that you can lower the percentage. And you'll see the threshold at the top of the screen also lower. So from here, I'm going to go ahead and just thicken up the top. I'm going to go all the way out to the end again, and I'm trying to get an arc, and I'll edit the arc. And this time, just try and just straighten this out just a tiny bit. Like so, thicken that up at the front, and also just fill in any gaps. Just fill in any gaps with the Nico roll. I'm going to just try to flatten this off a little bit at the back, so it just points out at the front. Lovely. And then from there, we can go ahead and add in the sails. Now, what we'll do is we'll create the sails off the back. So the first thing we'll do is create an arc. So just create a more purposeful arc than you need to. So really give it some curve like this. It's going to be a bit too sort of cartoony, but if we just sort of get it to the point where we need it roughly, and then go up to here and edit the arc, we can bring in this angle. We don't need it quite so curved and kind of almost animated look to it. I'm going to bring that over here. And this is roughly the shape we want to make. We can leave a thin gap between the sail and sort of the main pole here in the center. That's fine. I don't mind that. And as long as height-wise it's roughly looking about something like this, it should look pretty cool. We'll tap away. And then again, from the base over here, we'll just create a curve, a bit more animated than we need it. And again, we'll get it to the point where we want it. Edit the arc. I want it to be somewhat curved, but sometimes Procreate likes to just change it to a straight line. So a little something like this. Tap away. And then we'll just draw in a straight line down here and link up the sail. Pop your finger on the screen to make sure it's nice and straight and linked into here, and drag and drop your color into that space. And you've got your sail on the back. We're then going to create two sails off of the front. So going up to the same point, we'll go ahead and draw in a line down here, which is going to be our next sail. Again, leaving a gap in there. We're then going to create another one that goes from here down towards the front of the ship, a little bit like this. And this one I want to be a little bit higher than the base over here. So it's got a little bit of a curve to it. And I'm just going to just manually draw this one in rather than create an arc. And I'll drag in my color. And then we're going to create one more sail that's going to sort of attach to the front. So we're going to just extend this area here ever so slightly. So we're going to just draw in a line here. And then we're going to go ahead and just draw in a bit of a somewhat straight line over to here. You can undo that if you want and just use the line you drew in. Again, don't stress over it too much. And then we're just going to go ahead and run a line through here, through into that shape. So I'm just going to manually just fill that in, keeping it nice and loose. Drag and drop your color in. The two are going to be sort of as a silhouette, very close to one another. And then this will be the final shape that we want to go with. We may want to, at this point, maybe increase our brush size up to maybe about 3% and just run up that center pole, pop your finger on the screen. And I'll redo that one because I want it to sit nice and center in the middle there. Pop my finger on the screen, lovely. Just to make sure the pole in the center is a little bit longer. I can even edit the line if I want to there and just stretch that out, making it a little bit taller. And then I'll maybe even just reduce my brush size. So tap away, reduce it down to about 2% and just introduce a little sort of detail of somewhat at the top. You know, maybe like some sort of point at the top of the pole there. That's cool. So with your boat now in position, we can go ahead and add a reflection around it. So let's go to the layer, swipe it to the left and duplicate it. The top one we'll just grab our cursor. We will flip it vertically. We'll move it down so it touches the bottom of the ship that we drew. You'll get these three lines if you've got snapping turned on. So go down here and turn on snapping. Those three lines let you know you've moved perfectly straight down. And then we're going to zoom out. We're going to grab the distort tool We're going to grab this node here, the middle one at the bottom, and drag it off to the left. That sun's coming right across, so we want to just move that all the way across over to here. The angle is going to be a little bit steep, and that's fine. I like that. A little bit like this, and then tap on your cursor when you're done. Then we'll distort this. So we're going to go ahead and grab our eraser, tap on the eraser and make sure we're still using the Nico roll. And we're going to go ahead and reduce the brush size down to about 3% and just run streaks through this at all different types of pressures. So just feel free just to really break into it until you've got a little bit of a silhouette of the shape, and try and maybe just break in from the sides a bit so you get something a bit more like this. With the sails, we're going to go ahead and go to our layer for the ship, create a new layer, tap on it and clipping mask it to the ship for the moment. We'll go to our colors and grab the first color in the palette, top left. Brush size wants to maybe be around 10%. We're going to just cover up the sails themselves with a light sort of patch of color. So I'm just going to try and match up to the curves of the sails just a little bit, and also leave a bit of a gap in between these two. That subtle little line there just helps with a little bit of separation. And likewise on the back, I'm going to create some curves, keeping it nice and loose. Don't run into the body of the ship, but if you need to, you can go ahead and just erase if you have. And likewise down the pole in the middle. So I'll grab my eraser, reduce the brush size down. It's still the same brush as we changed it to earlier, so I'll just run this down the center here, just to get rid of that and any excess that runs onto the ship itself. Then with that, we're going to go ahead and continue with our eraser. We're going to make the brush size around about sort of 8%, and we're going to kind of just destroy what we've just done. I want to go ahead and just, in the center here, I want to take away some of the color. I want to just create a little bit of a lighter tone, and we could lower the opacity down of the layer, but I want to keep some of its details and introduce more details that are quite somewhat obvious to see. And then I'm going to take away from the top edge a bit more, blend that in, and following the curvature of the shape will also give you these nice streaks, just like we did with the background. So it's just meant to be a subtle color that will just show you that it is a sail. For example, now I'm just going to go across the bottom then and just sort of blend that out, leaving a little bit of that sort of color residue left over there. Here, for example, I'm going to go ahead and reduce the brush size down to about 5%, and I'm going to follow the curvature of what was this one here, so here, and just try and introduce a little bit of separation. That's fine. And then streak outwards towards the right, leaving a bit of that color. And then on this sail also, I'll make the brush size about 6% and just take away from down the middle, across the very bottom edge. We can leave a lot of sort of whiter area here just to show that there is, two separate sails. It will help us again with separation. And we're just following the curvature of that shape a little bit more, just introducing some streaky painting effects. So when you zoom out, you should end up with a little something like this. You can maybe hack away into some of those details if they're a little bit too sort of painting-y and a bit too streaky. And once you're then done, we can then go to the layer, tap on it, and just lower its opacity down just a little bit more until you get to something that you're happy with. And I'm quite happy with about sort of 75% there on the opacity. It just helps those sails stand out a little bit. Now we're going to get into the finer details, which is where a lot of this sort of comes to life in a different way. And I call them scratch highlights and shadows, but ultimately they're just final highlights and shadows. So if we go to our layers, we're going to go right to the top and create a new layer. We're going to go to our colors, and we're going to grab this color here, the bottom of the fourth column. We're going to go to our brush library and go to the option of inking and use the dry ink brush. The size can fluctuate, but I've got it about 9% for a minute. So if you draw quite thin, you're going to get a very thin line. If you press with some pressure, you'll get a nice thick line. Now, one thing we need to do is if we go back to the layer and we tap on it and we change the blend mode to add, now everything we draw in is going to be super bright, and it's going to be sort of the very crispy details. So for example, the pole down the center here, bear in mind we're not clipped to anything at all. So what you draw in really will just be loose on top of the painting. And then we're going to go down here, down the main pole, and I'm going to draw that into here. You can see I'm even slightly off to the right of the pole, and that's fine. I may even then go in the center here and just introduce a bit more of the orange just to really boost the highlights that are coming through there. Then, for example, with the sails, I'm just going to go ahead and just introduce a bit of color on the top edge there where the sun's just touching the top of the sail, and just really scratch that in, a little something like this. And then on this sail, I'm going to go ahead and just introduce a highlight that's going to go right up to it. So I'm going to go ahead and redo that line, just run that all the way down to here. And again, maybe just get in there and start scratching in some extra sort of lines in the sail. That's fine. A little line underneath will look great as well, just to, again, separate it. You can even draw a line just to connect it to the pole if you want. So such as like a rope there, for example. And then also going to go ahead and just maybe just introduce a little bit of a scratch or two down here, definitely under here, and keep it loose. Have fun with it. Just chuck it in. Just chuck it in. Zoom out, take a look at how cool that effect looks. With the ship, we're going to go ahead and then on the top surface here, just introduce a little bit of color. Runs all the way up to that top edge. Also likewise underneath it too. Underneath the front of the ship, we'll go ahead and introduce a little bit more color there. And we're going to go ahead and just streak in some extra bits of color that run across. Maybe we'll introduce a little bit of color on the back edge where the lighting is just wrapping around the ship and is being caught there as well. And likewise there at the base, we'll introduce some more color. Then we're going to go ahead and zoom out of our ship a little bit because we're then going to introduce the color also onto the waves. So all of those lines you created before, you're now going to go ahead and introduce even more of them. So we're just now going to sort of scratch in some super lovely bright highlights. So you can take a look at some of the big blobs you added in before if you want, and just sort of streak on the top edge of them if you want to just keep it sort of a bit more precise, or you can literally just scratch away horizontally into the canvas and just create these lovely bright streaks. You can create really short ones, you can just create nice curvy ones, it's totally up to you, but just really emphasizing those brighter highlights. And especially over here on the right, I'm just going to zigzag almost all the way down, and that's where the light's coming straight towards us. I'm going to go ahead and just go across here. I'm going to get right up close to the ship. There's a lot of light in there that could be introduced. And we can let that just run round the ship as well towards the back edge. We've got shadows to introduce in the water as well, but have fun with it. Again, try not to be too sort of intricate with it. Just chuck the color in, nice and scratchy, nice and fun, nice and loose. Now at this stage, we're going to introduce something that's probably going to look a bit wild. So we will go ahead and go to our layers and create a new layer. Change the blend mode from normal to add, just so that you don't mess up any of the work you've already done in case you want to adjust any other highlights. But with the brush still set, we're just going to introduce some sort of figure of 8 shapes over here to show that, you know, as the waves are closer to us, they're a little bit larger, therefore they're a little bit sort of wavier and a bit more curvy, rather than these sort of straighter ones in the distance. So I'm going to start over here and do figure of 8s. And the only thing I'm going to suggest is we make our canvas a little bit smaller like so that when you go off the screen on the left, when you reintroduce the line back onto the canvas, it's not like this, for example, where we're doing like this. We want to make sure we run all the way off to the edge of the screen and just introduce lots and lots of waves. And then as you get further up, you can let them get a little bit flatter. You can ultimately just create lots and lots of crazy little waves and just let them just roll back in. And it kind of looks as if those waves now, as they get closer, just have a much more sort of curvy nature to them. I really like it. I think it's nice and easy, nice and fun, and you end up with this cool little look to it. Now, as I mentioned, we've got some shadows to introduce. So let's go back to our layers, go right to the top and create a new layer. We're going to go to our colors. We'll go ahead and we'll grab this top color in the second column. With our brush still set to the dry ink, we can introduce some more shadows. So again, just inside here, we can go ahead and with the dry ink, just introduce some horizontal lines, just the same as you did on the right, but this time just in the sort of shadowy area for a start, just behind the ship. So just a little something like this. Introduce those lines, let them occasionally run astray, that's fine. And then again, we're going to go ahead and just introduce some in the lighter areas. Of course, if things have a top highlighted edge, sometimes they will have a shadowed edge. So we can just get in here and just sort of streak in some sort of darker edges. If a wave's sticking up out of the water, it would therefore have a lovely highlighted side and a shadowed side as well. And it will just nicely break up your line. So as you get a little bit further back, you want to press with a little bit less pressure, and also maybe just create tiny little scratches of this darker color back here, like so, just ever so slightly. And we'll just streak this in across as well, just a little bit more, and maybe a couple more over here too. And that's all it needs to be. It's just something as simple as that, with this really cool effect. Now, just as I've done before in previous styles like this, we're going to go to our layers and go to the top, create a new layer. We're going to go to our colors and grab this color here in the bottom right, and we're going to create a border. So this color here on its own in the bottom right, Go back to your brush and change it to the option of painting and the Nico roll. The size can be 16%, looks a little bit too large. Let's go a little bit smaller than that, maybe about 12. And all you need to do is just simply go across the bottom. You can hold your pen down and get a nice straight line just to start with, and then maybe the odd sort of streak above just to make it look like a little bit more messy. We're going to go ahead and draw in a line down here too. Pop your finger on the screen. And again, just you can run up and down it if you want to streak it in. Again, over here on the left, I'm drawing another one. Pop our finger on the screen to make sure it's nice and straight. I'll go across the top edge as well. Pop my finger on the screen, and again, you can then just get in there and just rough them up a little bit, as if you maybe just had tape on your design and you've just left this nice and framed. Next, let's go ahead and add in some texture as well. So we'll go to our layers and we'll go ahead and create a new layer at the top, same color. The only thing we need to do is change to a different brush. Now for you, it will be at the very bottom of your brushes in imported. For me, it's at the very top, simply because it's in a Halloween pack that I already created, and it's the canvas texture brush. We're going to set the brush to 100% in size, and all we're going to do is just give a nice big consistent color to the whole canvas now. But we're going to make sure we've given it a nice full coat. Nice full, so it's got lots of texture. Now at this point you're probably saying, Joel, what have we done? This is looking a bit crazy. But if we go to the layer and we change the blend mode from normal and we change it to the option of soft light, it will add in a very light amount of texture on the screen. But we can emphasize this as well by swiping the layer to the left and duplicating it. The bottom one out the two, tap on it and invert it. So tap on it and go to the option of invert. Now at the minute they're cancelling each other out, but if we go to our cursor and we zoom out of our canvas just a little bit and we tap at the bottom, we tap once, twice, 3 times, 4 times, 5 times. If you just go ahead and just zoom in on your canvas, you should be able to see that texture coming out. Now it's up to you how many times you want to move it down. We've moved it down 5. We can maybe go a little bit further, maybe down to about 6 or 7, and then tap on your cursor when you're done. And you should have this lovely amount of texture just running through the whole of your canvas at the top here. Now at this stage of the design, I always like to keep in my final adjustments. So I'm going to go to my layers and I'm going to go ahead and grab the shadow layer that we put all our dark lines on, and also the shadow of the boat. I'm going to go to my colors, grab the top color in the second column, go into my brush and switching it back to the same brushes we were already using. So we'll go to the option of inking and dry ink. And I'm just going to really block out that shadow a bit more. I want this to be a little bit darker. Really will help with the contrast of the whole thing, because then the sun will look even brighter. So we're just darkening that up, really bringing out the full size and scale of that shadow. Maybe even just a couple more lines to either side. I'm then also going to go ahead and zoom out of there a little bit. I'm going to go to my colors and I'm going to go down to this blue layer here that we had just above the sea. If we go to our colors and we go back to the second color in the middle row, we go back to our brush and go back to painting and the Nico roll. I'll reduce the brush size down to about 5% and just sort of streaking a bit more of the blue over here. We've definitely got space here to be just introducing a little bit more blue and a little bit more variety in the color of the entire piece. So I'm going to go ahead and just sort of streak in a few more areas of blue over here. Leaving the darker tone a little bit towards the bottom, that's fine, but we've definitely got space that we can just really bring in some more color. These lovely little areas of blue. You can maybe even start to look at some of the waves you created and maybe purposely just add it in some of those curves that we introduced. Another adjustment I want to make is if I go to my layers and we go to the boat layer, so the actual dark shape for it, I go to my eraser, I've got the Nico roll. I'm going to go ahead and with my eraser maybe set to about 5%. I'm going to start at the top and try and avoid my pole at the top there. I'm just going to try and just sort of hack into here and just sort of straighten up the canvas, or the sail, should I say, just a little bit more across there, just to sort of point that out a bit more. And if I go to my layers and go up to the white layer for the sails, I'm also going to go ahead and just sort of chip away into them a bit more, just a little bit more. Just sort of pushing the colour a little bit off to the right edge. I'm going to really take that colour out of there a little bit more. Push that out to there. And also I'll take a bit more colour out of there too. And move that off to the side, just to separate them out a bit. Now if I go ahead and pinch with 2 fingers and I go full screen with 4, we end up with today's finished design. So I hope you enjoyed today's tutorial. As always, please be sure to share your designs with me over on Instagram when you're done. I love seeing your finished creations. As always, be sure to subscribe for weekly Procreate tutorials, and if you want even more tutorials from me, you can come and join me over on Patreon. There's a link in the description down below where you can check out all of the 70 designs that you unlock when you become a patron. And with 3 more added every single month, it's probably even bigger at the time of you watching this video. So be sure to check out everything in the description down below. You can get your name featured in videos, sneak peeks, and much, much more. And if you like this tutorial, you'll probably like this one over on YouTube. You can tap on the screen now and go ahead and check out that video. So have a wonderful day, and I'll see you in the next one.